This episode of The Big 6-0 brought to you by Louis Carr Real Estate, helping people in the Hills District find their dream home since 1992. Ready to buy, sell or rent? Check out louiscarr.com.au for all your property needs.
If you're old enough to remember when phones had cords and the only thing that went viral was a cold, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the Big 6-0 with Kaylee Harris and Guy Rawlinson. Because who better to discuss life's second act than two people who still think mature is a type of cheese?
Welcome to the Big 6-0, if you've stumbled onto us for the first time. Joining me for this deliciously nostalgic episode is my co-host, friend and culinary guru, Kaylee Harris. How are you, Kaylee?
I don't know about culinary guru. The only thing is I love food. Does that count me as a culinary guru?
Tick.
There you
Tick. Kaylee and I, of course, go way back to days at Epping West Public School where lunch boxes and treasures like Vegemite sandwiches, the occasional treat from the canteen was gold.
Yep.
And today we're dishing up a bit of a feast of childhood memories from the 60s and 70s. Food that we probably got dished up as kids, right?
And hasn't it changed so much? And I guess our knowledge of food and awareness of food has changed so much in the last 30, 40 years.
When you look at some of the canteen food, and we'll get into that a bit later, that was billed as health food, and you look at it now and think, oh my gosh, did we really ingest that?
I know exactly what you're talking about. I've got it written on my list and we'll bring it up later.
So when you were growing up, I mean, there were a lot of foods that we had and that I'm sure listeners would be able to relate to. But the one thing that I want to kick us off with is, and I didn't know why it was called this, but we always used to get dished up bubble and squeak.
Well, bubble and squeak, it's funny you should say that. That was a thing. We didn't get it at our house, but I would go to friends' houses and their parents would dish it up. And I would think that was the bee's knees. I was like, what is this stuff? And I'd go home to Mum and go, Mum, can we have this bubble and squeak? Oh, no, that's rubbish. And then she'd serve us tripe.
Well, there's a lot to be said about tripe. I never had it, but plainly you did.
Oh, my gosh. My mum used to do tripe. And for those who don't know what it is, it's the lining of a cow's stomach. It's white, like a slice of white sort of meat. And she would do, just to make it taste better, she'd do it in a white onion gravy.
Oh, I'm salivating.
Tripe with white, and it was so good until I found out what it was.
Oh, no.
I loved it. It's like, Mum, tripe, more tripe. And because, Mum and Dad were young parents and didn't have any money. So I remember we lived on, chicken legs, chicken drumsticks, 5 different ways with meat, with mince.
Yep.
How many ways can you serve mince up? Sausages and things like that. It was, and even back then, I think lamb was quite cheap.
Yeah, look, I never dreamed of chicken and mince. Back in my day.
Back in my day,
my mum reckoned that if you crumbed anything, people would eat it.
Oh yeah,
and that was the rule in our house, that you had to try it first before you said you didn't like it, and it was okay because she would crumb everything. But I remember one night she served up what I hadn't. Look, I can't even really describe it, but basically it was lamb's tongues.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
And she'd crumb it, and I thought, the fact that she
Did you know
said,
what it was?
No idea.
Okay.
No idea. Tasted fine until I found out what it was, and then couldn't look at it.
Oh, well, speaking of that, my dad used to love eating. They used to be able to buy lamb's brains in a tin, and he would heat it up and then put it on toast.
Oh, no.
And,
really? In a tin?
Yeah, it came in a tin, right? But back then, how many foods came in a tin? I'm thinking Peck's paste.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Mind you, I still like Peck's paste.
Is it the deviled ham one?
Yes.
Yes.
I love that stuff on toast.
I know.
My kids look at me like I've got 3 heads when I bring that home. They go, what is that?
And you can still get it.
You can still get it. Highly processed, really bad for you. But when we were growing up, it's just you'd go shopping, at the supermarket on a Saturday, and there'd be a tin of Peck's paste in there and a tin of Spam, and all those.
Spam.
Cut up the Spam into slices and fry it.
How exotic.
I know.
Man, I mean, I forgot about Peck's paste. I used to love that devil, and I didn't know you could still get
Yeah,
it.
you can still get it. Well, you could I think up until about a year ago, because I remember I bought it home, and I think the Peck's paste, the deviled ham is like a ham spread. The Peck's paste is like an anchovy spread.
Yes,
And
yes.
you should have seen the looks I got from the kids at home when I brought that home and opened the tin and they got a whiff of it. But remember back in the 70s when the whole ham thing was such a big thing. We're talking about Spam. But that's when Hawaiian pizza and Hawaiian stuff came in. And my mum used to make chicken Maryland. Like you said, she'd crumb the chicken because you crumbed everything. Then she'd crumb a banana and she'd crumb a few pineapple slices. And we'd have this whole Hawaiian feast. And we thought we were so cool because we're having what the Hawaiian people eat.
Oh, look.
Even though I'm sure they never did.
We used to have this thing called Hawaiian chicken. And it'd be a barbecue chook or whatever. And then you'd just pull it all apart and put, corn and a creamy sauce and pineapple. And it was like, yeah, that was exotic. Because,
Pineapple was in everything back then.
Of course, and today, I mean, those dissenters who say we shouldn't have pineapple and pizzas, I mean, gosh, where were they brought up? Of course it should be there.
Well, it's funny. There's a whole world of people out there that think that pineapple is a joke fruit. It's not a real fruit, And somebody tried to make it relevant by sticking it on pizza.
Well, I'm a fan, and I don't think it's a joke fruit. But when I was a kid, before the invent of the toasty makers and whatnot, did you ever have a jaffle iron?
Yes, we had yes, we did. Yes, we did have a jaffle iron. The ones where you would close it properly, not like a sandwich press now where it just kind of sits. It was closed properly, and your bread would be completely sealed and have little lines on it and stuff like that, and you could put all sorts of goodies.
That's it. You couldn't make 4 at a time. You'd be making 1 at a time, and by the time you actually got it, and it'd burn the roof of your mouth as well. And
no, the filling was always way too hot.
Oh yeah. And talking about cheese, did you ever have a fondue?
We did. I was going to ask you whether you had a fondue because, chocolate fondue is one thing, but cheese fondue, that just screams 1975, doesn't it? You could just dip anything into that cheese. And again, very hot. You had to be careful you didn't burn the roof of your mouth off. But
and Artery City. I
know.
I mean, is cheese just one of the dairy products you say, oh, you can't get enough of this? Or is it like, my gosh, I'm having a heart attack because I'm now 7 and I've been to too many fondue?
Exactly. Parties. I think cheese is, I guess it's a processed food, isn't it? I suppose. I don't know. Is it probably and speaking about processed food, what about if you went to a party, it was very special if you had a slice of devon with mashed potato in it and you'd roll it up and stick a toothpick through it, and that was a la carte, baby.
With a little pickled onion. Yep. With a little pickled onion on top of it was very special.
Yep.
Oh, did anyone actually enjoy those? I don't know.
I didn't mind them actually. I didn't mind.
And who came up with the idea?
Well, someone came up with the idea of a pineapple with on the outside. Yeah, there it is. I guess I mean, and you'd stick toothpicks into the side of it with some ham. And maybe I forget what it was. Was it a cherry or something on the end of it? And people would pull it out the stick and anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, like a little glazed cherry or something on it or something.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah. Disgusting.
Look, pineapple's the unsung hero of Australian culinary sort of history, isn't it, really?
I think pineapple's fine if you eat it just as a fruit, but when you start sticking it into everything else, I don't know if you can do that.
Well, we did, and we grew up with it. I never knew. I probably had them, but when we'd go to people's houses, they used to always talk about pigs in a blanket.
Oh yeah,
and I know they were little sausages in pastry.
Yes,
but I'd never worked out why they were called pigs in a blanket because it wasn't pork.
It's pork.
Is it? Was it pork?
Yeah, sausage is pork.
I thought they were the little beef sausages.
Yeah, well, no, I think back then it was pork. I think that's why it was authentic pork sausages. But the other one was Devils on Horseback, which was a prune wrapped up in bacon.
Well,
I know.
Me.
That was very swish. If you went to a party and they had Devils on Horseback, you were and the other one, which I still make today, and I love it, deviled eggs.
Oh, you
Did you ever
mixed in all
have?
the right circles.
Oh, we were very well. When my parents finally got some money, yeah, we were very squished like that. And my mum would do. Mum was really good at making things fancy out of not much. I mean, when you make a deviled egg out of a boiled egg, and
Mm.
mix up all the yolk and stuff and put a bit of mayo in there and a bit of spring onion or whatever, and it was very flash. And I still make it. My kids still love deviled eggs.
There was something, and I don't know what it was. I don't think it was called anything. My mother used to get an egg, hard-boiled egg, and mash it up, and used to put milk with it. And like it was almost like a cereal. Like you'd almost have egg in
Oh,
milk. Yeah, it was. And
oh.
there was like 15 minutes of my life where I thought it was just the best thing ever. I don't even know if that's a real thing, and I don't know why she
I,
decided whether that was ticking all the
all
okay,
the
it's got protein and it's
Yeah,
got
the
calcium
dairy
and
and
yeah,
yeah.
I
Well,
don't know.
I don't
I
want to
don't know
burst
what
your
was
bubble,
going on.
but I've never heard of that.
No, I don't think there's any bubble to be burst. I just thought to myself, what was I thinking back in the day? But also, do you ever remember your folks talking about, oh, back in my day, we used to have bread and dripping?
Yes, bread and dripping. Yeah.
I never.
Dripping was a type of fat,
Yeah,
right?
that's
It
right.
was
And we always used to have
yeah.
like a ceramic tub or like a porcelain sort of tub or something in the fridge, and it had all the fat that came off your chops or whatever you had that night,
Yeah,
and it was
yeah.
kept in the fridge so as you could then put your chips in it, like when you fried up your
Oh
chips or
my
whatever the
goodness.
next day or whatever. And I thought, how healthy was that?
Yeah.
On one hand, you're putting in pineapple because you need fruit in your diet and go out and play in the sun and all those sort of things. And the next thing, you've got a bowl of dripping and putting your
Oh,
fish and your chips and your chops and everything
yeah,
in that.
yeah.
And here
Yeah.
kids, go for your
And
life.
also back then, I guess maybe a little bit before our time, maybe it was more our parents' time, but offal was a thing. I mentioned before about lamb's brains, but Mum would often make ox tongue soup, and she'd bring home an ox tongue which was probably a good foot long, with the throat bit still attached, and we didn't have a pot that
Oh,
was big enough, so the tongue would be half of it be hanging out the top with the lid on it, and this tongue hanging out the side, and then she'd have to turn it around so the bottom part cooked, and she would boil it. There was it was really tough meat, and she would boil it all day long on the stove. And I used to look at this tongue on the stove boiling away. But also back then, rabbit was a thing.
yes,
You could go to the butcher and buy rabbit,
yes. I
and that was a
I
thing.
remember my father saying, "Oh, try this," and I said, "Oh, what?" He said, "Oh, it tastes like chicken because everything tastes like chicken, doesn't it, when it's cooked, particularly if it was
Yeah,
crumbed in our
that's
house."
right. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
distinctly remember the first time I had it, and it was a very distinctive taste. But you're right, you could just go and
Okay.
buy rabbit at the butcher. So many things that I don't know whether can you still buy lamb's brains and offal at the butchers. And,
Oh, look, I'm sure you could if you asked your butcher, if you've got a good relationship with your butcher and said, "Can I get some lamb's brains?" I'm sure, he could get them for you. Things like that, and
mm,
kidney, steak and kidney. I can't do
yeah,
the kidney
yeah.
part. um, and liver, a chopped liver, all those sorts of things. But that's how our parents kind of made ends meet back in the 60s and 70s when we didn't have a heap of money, and
Yeah,
lamb was
yeah.
cheap then, not like it is
So
now,
the
right?
offals and brains and tongues is that a legacy of like a Anglo-Saxon sort of heritage? I mean, what was it? Is there no part of the animal that you couldn't eat?
I don't think so. I think you could eat everything, right? I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I think it was probably just that whole. If you're butchering an animal, whether it's the
Use it all
ears
up.
or whatever, you got to use
Yeah.
it all because
And
otherwise
what
it's a
about, you can
waste.
still these days, pig's trotters?
Yes.
You can buy those from the butcher.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But on the flip side of that, when it
yeah.
come to dessert,
Oh, here we
if you
go.
if
Yeah.
like you'd be going with your lamb's tongues and your what is it, your offal, your lamb's brains, your ox tongues. Did you ever have dessert?
Yeah, our dessert, and it was a huge treat back then, was ice cream with Milo. And if we're lucky to have a bit of sliced banana on it, even better. But that was a big deal. That was a big deal. And you
Yeah.
couldn't have a
What?
lot of Milo, otherwise the tin had run out before we went shopping again. So you'd get like two
Yeah.
teaspoons of Milo, and I thought that was the
Yep.
bee's knees. Or jelly. Jelly and ice
Oh
cream was
yes.
always popular.
Yes,
Yeah.
jelly.
Yeah.
We occasionally got that. We had two staples in our
Yep.
place. We had what Mum sort of called blancmange,
Blancmange.
which essentially, I think,
Is that jelly with milk?
well, I think she called it blancmange, but that wasn't what we got. We got junket. I don't even remember.
Yeah, they are junket. Oh my gosh, yes, I remember
Yeah,
junket.
that was a staple in
Yeah.
our house,
Yeah.
like junket,
Mhm.
and the little junket
Mm.
tablets would find its way into.
That's
Yeah, yeah.
right. Yep.
So there was
Yep.
that, and it was if Mum had made something which involved rice, she would always make extras because then you'd have rice, sugar, and milk.
Yeah. Is that what rice pudding
And
is? Because I don't
well, no, rice pudding is that's what rice pudding is, but this was just
rice,
rice,
sugar, and
spoiled rice with rice and milk, and it would be like once again. You remember that egg I told you
yeah.
about in the milk? I
Yeah.
think there might have been
Same
something
egg in
going
there
on
as
in our
well. Yeah.
house.
And I can't say I
I
had ever
think there
had
might have been
rice for
something.
dessert, but
Yeah, rice pudding was so good though,
yeah.
wasn't it? I
But
mean, if you can,
just following on from their dessert theme, that if you went out for the day, we considered ourselves really lucky if we got a chocolate paddle pop, because it was normally an icy pole, lemonade icy pole, right? That was the staple, that was the go-to, because they were like 5 cents or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
if it was a treat if it was a paddle pop type chocolate ice cream, and if it was your birthday, you got to have a heart.
Oh,
The streets have a
I
heart,
was
which was
only thinking about that the
really
other day.
expensive, coming in at about 60 cents.
Yeah, I remember because they got rid of those and they've got had magnums these days. But
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was like you're right. There was Peters and there was Streets essentially, and yeah, you had the
yeah.
icy pole, but then you had other ones. You had like lickety splits, which was like the
Lickety splits
yeah, it had two
and Bubble Bills.
Buffalo Bills, and the lickety splits had two sticks, so as you could actually
That's right.
split it in
You
half.
had two.
Yeah,
I know.
and
Yeah.
Barney Banana. Like there was
Yes.
so many different ice creams, but there's
Oh.
this the line wasn't it? There's Streets and Pete's, but it didn't matter. You just had your favourite, and you went with it. And whether it was, Buffalo Bill or Barney Banana, they years ago they stopped making the vanilla paddle pops.
Oh, did they?
Yeah,
I haven't had one for years. I
yeah.
used to
You
love
get
the banana
rainbow
ones.
ones.
Yeah, they had rainbow. But I used to
Yeah,
love the banana ones too.
yeah.
They're pretty good.
Someone told me that the shelf life of the vanilla ones wasn't nearly as long as the chocolate and the banana ones,
Okay.
so they discontinued them. And I'm talking
Wow.
15 years ago. So as far as I know, you cannot go and buy a vanilla paddle pop over the
Yeah.
counter anymore. And most of them are those rainbow colour ones anyway. They're very generic sort
Yeah.
of flavour. So
But and your parents would buy like your basic tub of vanilla ice cream once a week or whatever. But it was really special if you got the Neapolitan, and then you'd fight with your siblings over who got the chocolate, and then that was the most popular, and then the strawberry was next, and nobody wanted vanilla.
oh no, I see opposite, like chocolate and vanilla. Yeah, who wants the pink stuff? No,
Oh,
no.
girls want the pink stuff.
Really?
Yes.
Really? Oh, sorry.
And speaking of desserts, the interesting thing I noticed about desserts over the last few years is there's fads of desserts. So back in I guess it was the 80s, Black Forest cake was remember that was a huge, luxurious cake.
Yes.
And we all thought we were very special if we made Black Forest cake because it was this European thing. And then in the 90s, it became sticky date pudding.
Oh, yes.
Everyone made sticky date pudding.
Yes. Still
And
going.
then now it's anything infused. If you watch MasterChef or any of those programs, the desserts are so decadent and so incredible. But it's interesting how food is like clothing. It's very depends on the time, doesn't it?
Yeah. Look, there's a lot of reinvention going on. I mean, when you look at, say, fast foods, I mean, you can just take your pick these days of whatever you want, essentially. But way back when, your fast food was either pie, a sausage roll, or a hot dog, or you'd have fish and chips wrapped up in newspaper. And that was about
or a Chico roll.
Or a Chico roll.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about the Chico roll and the girl on the motorbike in the fish and chip shop.
Oh no. Yeah.
So you didn't have a lot, and then all of a sudden Macca's came into being at some stage in the middle 70s, and KFC and all that sort of thing. And I'm guessing you might still be able to remember the ditty that went with the whole Big Mac thing.
Because people used to have to come to the counter, and you would remember this because you worked at the same Macca's, would come to the counter and say, "What is it? Come on, let's do 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on."
Now, how old is that? How old is that? Is that Yeah,
late 70s, mid to late 70s, and I still cannot
that is
get that
just
out of my head.
a piece of marketing genius, isn't it?
Isn't it brilliant that we still remember it?
Guaranteed that most of our listeners would be
Yeah, would
across
know
that
that.
and just be able to recite that
Yeah,
without
and if
any
you came
problem.
in and said that, you got a free Big Mac or something, and I
I
think
know.
the Macs at the time were probably only like $1.80 or something.
Oh, they
And you
yeah,
and
they were. I mean, I got to, when I was working there. And this isn't an advertisement for McDonald's at all. I got to be one of those first people that got to cook a quarter pounder, and I thought,
wow.
wow, how special is this? But it's just the same deal as just
Yeah.
put it on the thing. But there was a fast food outlet before Macca's, or just it was 5 minutes of contest to Macca's. It was called Hearties, and I remember there was one at
Parties.
Hearties, and their jingle was "Hurry on down to Hearties where the burgers are barbecued."
Oh, I remember that.
They had like two or three, and,
Yeah.
and we went to Brookvale, and we got something from Brookvale, and Dad said, "I'm not going back there. Look how many chips you get for like that." Back in the day, you'd get like a whole wad of chips if you went to the fish and
Yeah.
chip shop, and of
Yeah.
course they served these little shoestring chips, and it was before
Yeah.
its time, so that went
Yeah.
belly up very quickly. But
Wow.
but and of course, a Chinese restaurant was a super special treat if you ever went to a Chinese restaurant on a.
Well, the thing about the Chinese restaurant was there's one in every single town in Australia. Thank you to the Chinese immigrants that came to this country and brought their cuisine with them, because there is one in every single country town in this country.
Yeah,
And
it's
we all got to have our honey chicken and
mm,
honey prawns and beef and black bean sauce and
yeah, and one of the great misnomers of my growing up, and this is the early '80s in an area that, well, you and I sort of grew up in, was there was a Chinese restaurant called the Happy Dragon.
yep.
Now, the Happy Dragon was a smorgasbord where everything was essentially orange because there was so much MSG in the food that you probably
Yeah,
glowed but you just had a belly full and
it
plate
was
after
so
plate
good.
after plate. And it cost like $6 to go in and just eat
Yeah,
as
then an
much as
hour
you
later
wanted.
you're hungry again was the joke, right? And everyone used
Oh,
to go, "Oh yeah, an hour later I'm hungry again."
exactly.
What?
And like I say,
Why
I
was
mean,
that?
radiation poisoning and too much MSG from, a Chinese restaurant where you could eat as much as you want for $6, pretty much on a par. But let's have a look, if we can go back to school and Canteen. I know we touched on this in a much earlier podcast,
Yeah,
and I did mention that there were some things there on the menu, like there was there's the Apollo Space Food Sticks and Space Food Sticks themselves, and the Jupiter bars, and they're all health food bars, but there must have been about like 6 cups of sugar in all of them.
exactly. And we were at high school, I went to a private girls' school, and it was billed as, we've got a very healthy canteen, and it was space food sticks, summer rolls, and Jupiter bars.
Yeah,
And like you said, that's not health food, but that's the way that it was sold to us, that it was better than chips and Cadbury chocolates, I guess.
yeah, and how interesting that you had Space Food Sticks, Jupiter, and Apollo Health, all something to do with space. Did that make it special?
Yeah,
Like,
interesting.
yeah, and
Off the
then of
back of the
course,
moon landing.
oh yeah, and they brought back the Space Food Sticks temporarily on the 50th anniversary of the moon landing too. They brought them back for
Yeah,
like six
wow.
months.
But highly processed food.
Y-
Super processed.
What? You're kidding me?
Oh, sorry.
and you're talking about ice blocks and whatnot. It would be remiss of me not to mention Sunny Boys
Oh my goodness.
and
Glugs.
Glugs. And what was the other
The
one?
red
There was
one
another
was
one.
the oh my gosh.
The
Raz.
Raz.
That's it.
Was it
Yeah,
Raz?
Raz. Yeah.
Yeah, no one wanted a Raz, did they? But then again, I didn't think anyone wanted pink ice cream either. But
We didn't
apparently
want a Raz because you'd have a red face and tongue for like your lips would all be red for the next 3 hours after you'd eaten it.
is that the equivalent like pash rash for an 8-year-old? Because
I think so. Yeah.
yeah. Hey, tell me something. Can you still buy toffee apples?
I think you can at school fetes. I think some people still make them. I was never a really big fan of
Yeah,
them, but
'cause
I think, I'm sure you can still get them somewhere.
more teeth were lost, I think, on toffee apples,
Oh,
trying to
definitely.
bite into those things, and then I'm sure there was
Yeah.
a
Oh
scheme
my God.
put.
And just like toffees. Remember toffees in a
Oh,
little paper skirt, a
yeah.
little paper thing, and you'd have those at school, and you could suck on them forever
Oh, yeah.
on the toffee, and it was just really what was it? Just sugar and
Oh,
I don't know.
No,
Something.
no. I mean, and every cake day stall that you would have at school, if you had those
Yeah.
at school, where there would just be a multitude of cakes, and it used to be like 2 cents for this
Oh,
cake
it
or
was
whatever it
heaven.
was. It was. I
I
know.
love a cake store.
I know. And then you'd wash it all down probably with a Mr. Juicy or a chocolate milk or something as well.
Yeah. Remember when Move Milk came in the, I think that was in the 80s. It was the coolest thing ever, wasn't it? The ads were really cool
Oh, yeah.
for the Move chocolate milk. And chocolate milk was all of a sudden it was a thing, because before that we used to mix in, what was that stuff? Apart from Milo, there was something in an orange tin.
Oh, there was a few. There was Activite. There was Ovaltine.
Activite.
There was
and Ovaltine.
Quick.
Yeah, that's
Nestle's
what I'm
Quick.
thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah. How bad is that for you?
Oh, and whether it was the strawberry or the banana, and you think,
Yeah.
and just mix it in. But yeah, those move ads were just like they
Yeah,
were
so
every
cool.
teenage boy's fantasy. I think some of those ads.
I think so. All the chicks in bikinis and all that.
Yeah, but that was an era, wasn't it?
Oh my
And then there
gosh.
was all those like other little lollies. Like I remember the bubble gums, because you'd have the bubble gums with the football cards, but then you'd have Big Charlie bubble gum and Metro bubble gum and Bellboy bubble gum, all these bubble gum, and even Whiz Fizz sherbets with the little spoon and Pluto
the
and
Whiz
Mickey's.
Fizz were great.
I know.
I loved Whiz Fizz. That was the best thing. And, you'd go to the corner shop, and as we know, what was his name across the road from our school?
Oh, Mr. Perry.
Mr. Perry. Mr. Perry had a shop, and they used to have all the different lollies and all the caramel butters and the freckles and the milk bottles and all that stuff. And you would go and you would get, I think the lollies were like a quarter of a cent each. So you could get, for 2 cents, you could get 8 lollies.
Yep.
In a little white bag, and you thought you'd won the lottery.
And he'd have the patience of Methuselah, because you would, I want some teeth and a banana and a redskin. I don't think you're allowed to call them a redskin anymore.
Well, the redskins were a little pricey because they were a little bit more.
True, yeah. So you'd have
you're right.
Your milk bottle and your freckles and your snake and your this and that, and it was a science. It was
wasn't it?
Science.
Yeah.
But also, I remember something from that shop, and they were called SOS cough drops, and they looked like little Jaffas. They were identical to Jaffas. They came in I can see it. It was a red and blue box, and it had like a, what do you call it, a lifesaver sort of thing, a life buoy on the front. But they were cough drops.
Yeah.
And you could buy them as an 8-year-old over the counter, and they were hugely addictive. They were supposed to be but they tasted okay. Yes, but I don't know what was in them. It's probably it's like Beck's and Vincent's back in the day. They became highly addictive, and kids would be buying them and happy to sell them. And how times have changed.
Well, back then too, things like soothers and anticol, or the little lollies that you could get that were, billed as getting rid of your sore throat or whatever, and I'm pretty sure they were just sugar.
Yeah, pretty much. It makes you feel better. It's like, if you were sick, you'd always have a bit of Vegemite on dry toast, and that was a cure-all as well.
Yeah, that's right.
No butter,
Chicken
or
soup.
you have your Dexal or your Enos, and that would always, that's almost like a kiss on a sore. That'll make it better. But I was talking to someone the other day about biscuits as well, and some of the biscuits that you just can't get anymore.
Yeah,
and they were lamenting the fact that this particular one was called a lattice biscuit.
Oh, the lattice! I think you can get them.
Well, this particular lady was not complaining, but she's saying, "Oh, we used to make this particular dessert out of lattice biscuits. Can't buy them anymore."
Yeah, you'd put cream between them, and you'd make like a sandwich or ice cream or something with those lattice things. Maybe someone will know. Someone will let us know.
But of course, I think the most famous politically inappropriate biscuit that you can't get anymore are Gollywog biscuits. I'm sure they're rebranded as something else these days. Scallywags. Which sort of, evokes the same sort of thing, but it's like coon cheese and cheese sticks. Cheese sticks with the little metal thing.
How bad is that for you? Processed cheese.
Oh. But it used to drive kids mad because they used to have those little metal ties on the end of and you couldn't get the damn things off to get to the processed cheese, which wasn't doing you any good
either. Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
And sesame snaps. I mean, you can still get sesame snaps. I love those things.
Oh, you can.
Yeah.
But I only found out you can't get morning coffees anymore. You can't get butternut cookies anymore.
Oh.
You can't buy honey jumbles anymore.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Oh my god!
I've done my research.
It's been so long since I bought biscuits. I don't tend to buy biscuits much anymore.
No. We used to. You got your Tim Tams these days, but there was. I remember vividly is before Tim Tams, there was exactly the same biscuit. They used to come in a pack of like 6, individually wrapped in bright blue and gold and green and red thing, and they were called Zacks. I don't know why they were called Zack, but they were Tim Tams.
Okay.
They were Tim Tams.
Well, just a cheaper
and
version.
They were great. Well, because they only came in a pack of 6, they were probably expensive. I think we probably had them once.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I remember them because they were just aimed at kids.
Yeah.
And once again, I don't think I'm imagining it. I can picture the wrapper. Someone, once again, will probably reach out and say, oh, yeah, I remember these. In the same way they'll say, I remember Happy Snacks. I remember Chickadees. I remember all those foods that we grew up with.
You know something you can't get anymore? Lollygobble Bliss Bombs.
Oh,
do you remember those? Oh, my gosh.
yes.
You can't get those anymore.
You sure?
I think so.
I'm going to look.
You go look for us. You go and do research. You're good at that stuff.
I'm not going to do research. I'm going to leave you now. I'm going to go down the supermarket, or I'm going to go online. I'm going to do the whole lollygobble bliss
If you find
bombs
any,
thing.
promise me you'll buy me some.
I'm going to buy you some.
Okay.
I'm going. I'll see you later.
Cheers.
Bye.
The views and opinions expressed on the Big 60 are personal and reflect those of the hosts and guests. They do not represent the views or positions of any affiliated organisations or companies. This podcast is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as professional advice. Please consult with a qualified professional for guidance on any personal matters.
Oh, and before we go, let's give credit where credit is due. Kaylee Harris and I came up with all the genius content for this week's episode. Our producer, Nick Abood, well, he keeps the lights on and makes sure we don't accidentally upload a cat video instead of a podcast. So thanks for keeping us on track, Nick. Nick?